Welcome to the Power Up Podcast, your source for the latest tech insights in electric utility design and the energy industry at large.
I'm Cory Burns, a licensed civil engineer with a deep background in structural engineering and engineering technology implementation for the utility industry.
And I'm Trevor Scullion, a tech entrepreneur with over 20 years of experience creating solutions that power the future of engineering and technology.
On this show, we'll explore how emerging technologies, evolving standards, and smarter systems are reshaping the way we think about designing and modeling our energy infrastructure, as well as the broader energy landscape.
From AI and digital twins to design automation, right through to the business of energy, we dive into the trends driving innovation in this critical space at this critical time.
And we're not afraid to ask the tough questions or challenge a few old assumptions along the way.
So plug in and power up.
All right, today we've got Nelson Antunes with us. He's the supervisor of substation design and drafting over at Eversource Energy. Nelson has been a regular attendee of the SDSIC, and that's actually where he and I had the opportunity to meet, and you certainly had interaction with Trevor there as well. And at that conference and in those times of getting together and communicating and coordinating, we certainly talked a little bit about our topic for today's discussion, which is Revit. Nelson has expressed in multiple settings, not just at the SDSIC, some of his interest in Revit as a potential tool in the utility industry. And we're here to talk today a little bit about Nelson, as well as some of his experience in the utility industry and where he thinks Revit might be able to kind of get us situated. So Nelson, really appreciate you joining us.
No, absolutely. It's a pleasure joining as well.
Yeah, we've been excited for this one, man. We've been, how many years have you been going to the SDSIC?
I've been a few times, but overall, it's been a few years overall between the few times that I think I've been to like 3 at this point, I believe.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. And it's been, this is one of the topics that's one of our favorite now is Revit, and everybody seems to be asking about Revit. So it's going to be a good one. Let's go.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I guess I can get started. I would say I believe like Revit pretty much is a strong competitor within the utility industry that hasn't been fully unlocked yet. I feel like it's the only software that I've come across that allows to facilitate real-time BIM collaboration. And to me, that's like huge because being able to work in real time to see the changes that are happening, especially if you're working with other vendors, which typically utilities, we're not just doing the work in-house, we're also vendoring work out as well, and they need to see what's going on at the substations. So that to me is very important. The best thing with Revit obviously is letting us work together, building designs in real time from different locations, both working with our teams and outside vendors. Most importantly, using Revit with Construction Cloud, we can update drawings right away without waiting for them to be checked out into our current drawing management system. This lets us work on several projects in the substation at once, which avoids obviously conflicts, which to me, conflicts in drawings is a big pain point for us. And I'm assuming pretty much every utility, because you're really dealing with checking drawings in, checking them out, but you can't do anything with the drawings if they're checked out. You have to wait till they check back in before you can do any work on it. So being able to do that live is really key because now you're basically saving a lot of time, not having to sit there and wait on drawings, and that's time is money. So that's one of the big advantages that I see. And then I also have 2 other advantages as well. The big one being the fact that if you're moving around equipment or you're adding things to drawings, you're not having to go back basically and go through other drawings to try to manually find all the drawings to update. With the click of a button, as you're updating one element, every drawing that's impacted automatically gets corrected. Unless obviously you're deleting something, then you probably would have to go back and dimension things that you add. But if it's just stuff like moving things around, it all gets updated on all the drawing sets.
Now, you are not originally in the electric utility industry. Is that correct? Do I have that right? Or
Correct.
Give me a little bit of and let everybody know kind of some of your background.
Yeah, so my background basically is I went to school for architecture and arts. And fortunately, when I out of school, it was like 2008. That was probably a bad time because there wasn't many architectural jobs, let's put it that way. So what I ended up having to do was I had to basically say, hey, well, I have these skill sets. I know Revit and I have skill sets that can translate well into other industries. And let me not just stay focused on just looking for an architectural job. And basically what I decided to do was look at other options. And one of them turned out to be working for electrical contractors. When I worked for electrical contractors, a lot of the stuff that I did is I did a lot of BIM collaboration with other basically other trades such as HVAC to fire protection systems and stuff like that. So I was basically laying out conduits, cable trays, trench. I was basically laying out panels, lighting, and coordinating that with other trades to make sure there's no clashes. And that's really where my Revit skills, I was able to use it from school. And from there, I also did a couple things for the utility industry, and Eversource being one of them. And then at some point, I decided to basically pursue applying for Eversource, and that's where I am ever since.
Ah, nice pivot, right? From a financial crisis in 2008 to to Eversource. Not bad.
Yeah,
Nothing
I
like coming out
didn't
of
want to be
school
unemployed.
and the
Let's put it
bottom
that
falling
way.
out, right?
I wanted to
Yeah.
be working.
It's always a joy to just come right out of school to a nice hot situation.
Yes,
That's right. Nothing like a financial crisis to get you going.
absolutely.
Well, that's
So,
good. So you got that experience in Revit and collaborative workflows, and I think that seems to be a really common theme in the conversations about Revit is collaborative environments, collaborative working space, and so you, as far as I understand, kind of based on your description and some of the conversations that we've had separate. You got a lot of that experience at your prior work, and you're really transferring that over, at least trying to over at Eversource and just kind of in the utility industry as a whole. Is that, expand on that a little bit because I think that seems to be, again, that common theme of coordinated modeling space. There's coordination workflows that does seem to be, in many senses, lacking in the utility. I mean, I think that's a lot of times what draws people to Revit or AC Autodesk. So expand on that a
Yeah,
little
and
bit, if you don't mind.
yeah, and I think what happens with this is one thing I learned coming to the utility industry was it's very different than like any other industry I worked at. With the utility industry, really, I mean, there's not really competitors. Let's put it that way. You're not competing for work because usually when you're in a competitive environment, you're looking for every way to streamline your workflows and find all the technology to make sure you do your projects efficiently. I mean, we do work on having our projects become efficient by providing tools. But it's a little bit different when it's like, how would you say, regulated monopoly is really what we are. I mean, I don't want to say anything wrong, but we're a regulated monopoly, so we are regulated by. But at the same time, we don't really have any competitors. We're just competing with ourselves. So
yeah,
when it comes to innovation, it's a little bit longer to implement innovation because you're not really competing, if that makes any sense.
yeah. I mean, that was the basis of the SDSIC. Nobody was really, competing against each other other than engineering firms, of course. But yeah, all the
Yeah.
utilities could share information. The basis of getting it. So Nelson, you mentioned Autodesk Construction Cloud, which was interesting. So what kind of challenges do you have implementing a cloud type application?
So we haven't. So I will say that we haven't implemented anything yet. I know we're working on at some point implementing a software solution. But what I'm looking at more is what I've seen in the value of Construction Cloud. Because when I worked at the other electrical contractors, I don't believe Construction Cloud was there yet. It was more like we were basically working collaboratively with central models and we're linking to the central model with local models. But the construction cloud, that completely opens up everything because now you can actually work in
Yeah.
real time. You don't have to worry about syncing anymore. It's just being done automatically. And that's where I feel like that's a huge benefit.
It's massive, right? And so it's a big passion of mine, right? The ACC, Autodesk Forma, right? We go from Revit and push it up to Forma and do some, proposal planning and stuff like that. And it's always a challenge with the compliance groups, convincing them that the data is safe. And I'm just curious what you've faced. Maybe that's a second conversation, maybe later on.
Yeah, it might be a future conversation. As I see, again, I don't know what approach our company will take in the future, but I do know that I be there to guide them and provide the feedback that I see from looking at all the different options out there. And I definitely see ACC as having huge potential for the company.
Awesome.
Well, I mean, case in point, with not just being able to collaborative modeling, but also now they've got the data, Autodesk is the data exchange they're pushing. You have a lot of that downstability shifting, away from just the modeling collaborative into then the PLM space, kind of being forth. So If you wouldn't mind, speak a little bit as far as near-term, long-term benefits you see with, and that could be a lot of things. Curious, just not just near-term, but also long-term, where the benefits.
Yeah, so I'd say in the near term, it's basically having the model where basically when you're doing basically the changes on in the model, that those changes are being reflected on every sheet that it touches. That's probably the big benefit, like in the short term, is we're not going to deal with multiple drawing files, individual drawing files that we update manually. It's now going to be done automatically because it's going to know what to read and what to update. So that in the short term is going to be beneficial. Also, things as simple as like basically a label on a piece of equipment or something. If something changes, are you going to remember to go back and update all those labels manually? I don't think so. I mean, you should, as a designer or an engineer, you should at least be looking at that stuff. But ideally, if it can be done automatically, it's going to be huge time savings. And then in the long run, the big thing is the data. The data is huge. Being able to basically geolocate these substations and then have data on the modeled components that you have, you now can do analysis with many different softwares. And you can see things such as, I don't know, like floodplain analysis. Maybe the 100-year floodplain changes all of a sudden tomorrow. And now you want to run analysis against every single substation that you have in Revit and see, hey, what components can we highlight are going to be impacted? So for me, that's the long-term goal, is that data-driven model being used in various applications and other groups. That to me is the long term.
That's great, Nelson. I'm always interested in the the content library. The building up of the. What kind of approach did you take with the 3D model library for Revit? Did you reach out to manufacturers, create the content from scratch? What was the?
If it wasn't like an Eversource, like I said, we haven't gotten to that approach yet, so I can't really comment too much on that.
Okay.
But I will say with some of the other companies I worked at, electrical contractors, at the time we just we had models that we would save, and at the time they were just saved locally on our drives, on the network drives, and we would just pull those. But what I do see is the fact that Revit now has capabilities to have basically all your stuff stored in the cloud. You can create a cloud library basically with all the parts you want to use. So I think the biggest benefit would be working with the manufacturers to see, hey, listen, can we get these models that you guys are creating for like the utility side? Can we get those in the cloud environment for being able to pull those components into our Revit files? I think that's going to be huge. And it's a big benefit for both us as on the utility side and the manufacturers. Because guess what? If the manufacturer has the models and we can grab those models, do you think a company really wants to sit there and spend time modeling every single component? No. So if you have two competitors that are building components of the same item, like a breaker, for instance, are you going to choose the competitor for a couple dollars less that has no 3D models, or are you going to choose a competitor that has couple dollars more, but has a 3D models, which is going to save time and money? And the key is you're going to choose the manufacturer probably that has the 3D model, so you can pull them right into your designs. So that's where I see like the benefit between the two.
Yeah, I think the architectural platform guys called it spec'd in, right? The odds of like using someone's models, windows or doors or trimmings, is pretty much going to be in the bill of material when you spec the house or the building, right? They're not going to redraw it all. Yeah, interesting to it's something we've been trying to push as far as the inside the SDSIC, everybody in the physical group, right? They've always been trying to push the manufacturers, more and more models. Maybe we'll get you to lean on some
No, I'd love to. Like I said, that's something that I definitely want to see happen. Is I want to see the manufacturers get more involved because, again, it's a benefit for both parties, basically.
Yeah, it's always sad to see the manufacturers doing 3D modeling with SolidWorks or something, and they'll put out a 2D spec sheet, and then we have to model it again when we want the models on our side, right? It's a pretty sad process.
Well, Nelson, I think you really spoke to Trevor's language for sure with being able to post all of your projects in AC and being able to do, say, like, as you mentioned, floodplains. I mean, there's a perfectly use case. I can't think of too much of a better one. GIS data readily available with Esri connection, those kinds of things. That's I think that's what the young kids these days call big brain thing. That is definitely forethought down the road, and that is exactly what I think we're hoping you could bring to this conversation. where does this go? But I do think that the conversation there kind of inherently shifted into what's a really important portion of this discussion is, what are the shortcomings for Revit? Where does it fall kind of flat? Maybe it's not ready. Where would companies potentially struggle to uptake Revit? What would you say are some of the biggest hurdles you faced, or even you expect any other company might face? One of those being kind of one of those we just talked about with vendor models, things like that. What are some of the other ones?
Some of the issues I see are like, if you're gonna because obviously Revit wasn't designed for the utility space. It wasn't like someone created like an utility portion for Revit. So a developer if any developer wants to come in and develop tools in Revit, the biggest thing is built-in system families in Revit. There's a couple key components, at least that we've identified, that are important. I mean, they can be done without those system families built in by manipulating other aspects of other families that are in Revit, but they're huge. Like for instance, cables, trench, and grounding. Those are all big key components that technically don't necessarily exist in Revit, but you could manipulate them with other aspects such as flex pipe for cables. But then you're manipulating something that it's really not. And if someone's going to want to like code or do any kind of programming in Revit to create tools for 3D design, it would make more sense to have those components in there. It's not to say it can't be done. You can do it without it, but it just makes it easier for a programming side. And also your schedules can finally have actual schedules that are cable schedules, trench schedules, grounding schedules.
You mean actually use the data that you model in?
Yes.
that old thing, that old fashioned idea.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, you can manipulate things and try to have someone code it and be like, hey, look for this flex connector that we're calling cable and make it do what it needs to do. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, it could be done, but it just doesn't make sense. It'd be nice to have a developer working alongside the Revit development team to basically, hey, what are we missing? Can we get this in there so we can program to it?
That's I couldn't agree more. I'm also curious what your thoughts are when it comes to kind of internal company standards. When it comes to, I work on the contracting. You're on the kind of energy company side. There's often a unique dynamic between those two. It tends to be a little bit. Sometimes the contractors, we have our own internal company standards. Utilities want things done their certain ways. How would you see development of standards of, say, a Revit be an obstacle or implementation of Revit at any given utility, or just?
Yeah, I think it's one of those hard things to really think about. It's the fact that a lot of utilities have specific standards based on the regions that they're in. So it's really hard to dictate like one specific standard across all utilities. But what I can say is, as utilities are looking to take a lot of their legacy standards and a lot of their new standards, it's a good time for this development to incorporate those standards into the Revit software and figure out like, hey, where could we consolidate some of these standards, or can we add the standards into the design tools that we need? I think ultimately it'd be nice if you can get all the utilities to kind of get together and put at least some core standards for the utility industry within the Revit software. But that's something that would take some sort of committee of all utilities coming together to agree upon it. I guess the only thing I could say is on the wiring schematic side, what you could do is you could follow basically a IEEE standard and make sure all symbology follows that. That's something that I would say would be very important for standards. But again, every company's still going to have slightly different standards, such as like different title blocks to different thing they want to see on drawings, different view templates. So those are stuff that I think the companies will still have to set up for themselves. But I think overall, though, especially with like our company, we're like a 3-state company. So obviously we have all different standards between the 3 different regions that we've slowly migrated into one single standard. And I think with moving into Revit, it's going to help us even force the 3 states to even come closer together on those standards.
You can't see it, but along right outside the frame, Trevor's holding up a sign that he's going to bring in. It says SDSIC. So
Uh,
there's this
Oh,
unique consortium.
yes.
I was just thinking about all the times we've sat in a room and listened to all the different utility companies sit and debate, all their different symbols for P&C side and why they all had to be unique and different. It was a pretty frustrating room to sit in. It's been 10 years of that discussion, but you're absolutely right, Nelson. I mean, that's if we could just come together with some standards, I can tell you from the software side, it certainly makes it a lot easier for us to develop, tools and things if there's standards. And
Yeah,
the lack of
especially
them.
yeah, especially like an IEEE, like they have regular IEEE meetings. Like, wouldn't that would make more sense just to have all utilities just follow the IEEE standards? So it's the same across the board. There's actually written standards that they develop, and they're always updating. It just makes it so much easier for all utilities.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been working on these AI models. Fairly simple. I take all the IEEE standards and I teach an AI agent specifically how to check clearance values. That because it is a standard. We just don't
Yeah.
have that around the equipment substations, right? Still, for some reason, 20 years later, still up for debate. I guess. We'll keep plugging away and see what we can do.
Well, I think that's a good one to bring into the SDSIC in general. I mean, I know that's a conversation that we've had in a couple of the teams. We'll certainly have that discussion with regards to starting to create a standard. It never fails. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to create a good standard that everybody agrees to. It's just it's tough. It's tough to get there. But I totally agree. What you described as far as getting some standards in place. I think it's a really unique viewpoint or vantage point that you bring in with being at the utility and having kind of three separate entities. And you've noted that you guys are really starting to get a little bit better agreement amongst those separate entities, but there's still room to grow. And it sounds like your perspective is Revit and kind of getting towards ACD utilization or leverage those tools really does help further facilitate that for kind of standardization. I'm curious, and I want to pivot here a little bit, Nelson. I'm
Yep.
curious with regards to, there's a lot of opportunity here for, what ways in which Revit can be. It has a lot of customization capabilities, and this is sometimes where I think people, not just in the utility industry, start to get over and it can come modeled in drawing templates, custom families, Dynamo scripts, plugins. The sky is kind of the limit. And I think that's partly where you're drawn to this. In some respects, I'm drawn to this. Anybody gets drawn to the capabilities that Autodesk and Revit offer. I'm curious where you feel like a proper introduction to a company, where do you start and just go from?
You're referring to like to Eversource itself, or
Could be Eversource, could be kind of any company.
okay. Are you referring to as in how do we like implement this on companies? I just want to
Yeah.
kind of understand that question a little better.
Yeah, for the utility industry, as you noted earlier, we're not heavy adopters of one new technology oftentimes, but specifically Revit is relatively scant. So if Revit is to get more and more of a stranglehold in the space, or more traction in the space of the utility industry, where would you suggest people start to kind of investigate Revit in their application within the work of the utility industry, whether that be the proposal stage process, the design stage process, coordination modeling, all that good stuff? Sky's the limit on customization as far as how far you can go. Where do you recommend people?
I'd say like to start and like in terms of a project wise, I would say like start with something small if you're developing the standards and stuff. I would say a substation, probably the easiest would be basically a greenfield site that's like new. There's no existing equipment that allow you at least to develop what you need for building out substations and setting the standards. And then the key would be once you establish those standards, then you start working the standards for like brownfield sites and all the existing, how we're going to handle like existing drawings from like, I don't know, 1960s or something. How do you deal with that? We have to figure out how to incorporate those because it's going to take a while to bring those into the Revit space because you're going to have to basically almost do it from scratch in a way, I guess you would say, because you're not going to want to really read off of 2D CAD files anymore. You're going to want those files to be in the model and to be linked to the view sets, which create your sheets. I'd say that's the biggest, the best way to describe how to at least move in that direction for any basically utility.
The 1960s. pretty funny where we have all these great AI projects and we end up having to scan, drawings from 1940s, 50s, like coffee stains, ink blots on them. It's a little bit more challenging than taking a digital print. So I got a question just along the lines of like, implementations. I mean, you have a unique background and, what do you look for when you're trying to hire people and bring them in to do Revit and electrical design and construction prints? I mean, what do you look for when you're trying to hire someone?
I'd say like pretty much what I look for, because I deal with only designers. So I deal with the electrical designers. And one of the big things that I've been doing is working with the local community colleges, because a lot of the colleges, they're getting involved. Revit's being taught in a lot of the schools, along with electrical theory and stuff like that. So when I'm hiring, I'm looking for like talent out of school that we can come in and grow with the company, because to be honest, a lot of our workforce is aging. There's like these phases where they hire a huge class of pool of candidates, and then it goes a couple years without hiring too many people, and then another set comes in of pool of candidates to hire. And what happens is when they retire, typically they all retire pretty close to the same age. And I think that's where we're at right now, is we have a lot of new talent and we don't have enough we have a senior experience in our group, but again, I think the new talent versus the experienced talent is definitely one side versus the other. So it's a lot more new talent. And the nice thing is a lot of these new hires that we've been hiring out of the community colleges and stuff, they're starting to understand things very quickly, which is nice, and they definitely adapt to technology. So I think that's been huge.
No, that's great. Oh, you think, I mean, it's got to be a much better conversation, having them come in and look at a 3D system that's advanced like Revit, versus years ago when you had, 2D microstation, it's just not attractive for a student, right? When you're, when you're going to leave school as a designer, who wants to work on that 1960s drawing, in a 1960s way? It's just, I'd imagine it's a much better conversation to get them to come in and work.
Yeah, a lot of it too. A big change will be like the way designers would mark up prints for drafters. A lot of the times, there's some that still prefer paper and pen and ink, and then there's others that prefer something like Bluebeam, for instance, to do all your digital markups. So we're getting a good mix of digital and hard copies in our company, and it's all based on a lot of it's embracing the technology, or just some are just comfortable with paper, and we're not going to change the way that some of the people decide to mark up prints, but we do introduce new technology, and a lot of times they do adapt.
Yeah, that's awesome. Hallelujah.
Are you finding that some of those new hires are kind of not just tech savvy, but comfortable doing some things like that?
I wouldn't say so. I believe some know a little bit of coding, but at least the technology aspect, they get it, and they want what a lot of us want, which is using technology to the best ability that we can to make our jobs more efficient. So if it means
Yeah.
like removing repetitive tasks and things like that, that can be done with technology, they're 100% embracing it, because they want to basically have more free time to focus on their projects, and it helps us also take more work in house.
All right, Corey brought up coding, so now, so I
Who's
mean,
open?
well, when you look at Revit, I mean, a lot of things that we do on our site, like if you look at Dynamo scripts and things, you could open an AI agent right now. You can use, Claude GP. You could use Llama locally, and you could generate scripts. Is that something that Eversource is open to, or you guys investigating that side of things?
Um, I'd say we're, we definitely know about it and we've looked at it. But since we're still really in the early stages of software selection, stuff like that, we really can't say what we're selecting, because I don't really know yet.
Right,
I mean, I
right.
have an idea, but I can't really say. I will say though that we are looking at all the different options out there. So coding, obviously, we know coding is definitely going to be involved somewhat in our operations for whatever software we implement, whether it be us doing the coding or an outside person that we hire to do it. There's going to be some coding, because even a lot of the tools that we've developed over the years for like 2D CAD, we had developers back then that developed basically scripts and tools to basically make our jobs more efficient. So I don't see that ever going away. I think it's still you're gonna need coding no matter what. And it'd be nice when you have someone in-house that understands the coding language and can help facilitate some of those basically script. In this case, it would be some of the coding that's needed for whatever automation we're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, we're starting to see a lot of the younger developers come in and, they refactor the code, or, they'll add comments to the code using an AI agent go through and like script out all this stuff. Now it's phenomenal how quickly
Oh,
it can
that's
be
awesome.
done. I can only imagine you're going to get, the students coming out of school now that know Revit, that'll be able to spin up, Copilot and use an AI agent to just write a script that'll clean up. It's going to move so fast now. It's going to be nuts. Having a tool like Revit in place is all of that.
Yeah, plus the nice thing with Revit is it just ties into so many different softwares within the Autodesk environment. So it just makes it so much easier, because when you do go with one software option that doesn't have those integration with other softwares, and you have to use third-party plugins or special coding to have it work together, it just becomes more of a nuisance than anything else. And just having everything in the same ecosystem just makes it so much easier.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Corey mentioned the was Autodesk Data Exchange, right? I mean, they take like 38 different file formats. So there's no more like, oh, it's in SolidWorks, I can't put it in, or it's in MicroStation, I can't use it. Right? It pretty much translates everything.
I think the coding thing is really kind of fascinating, especially when it comes to Dynamo scripting or Grasshopper scripting, which historically was like the low code mode option. And we had an intern come in, and I tasked him with some stuff in Revit, and he comes back with a Dynamo script that's just one node. He typed into ChatGPT. ChatGPT came out with a big code that turned it into a node. I was like, you just built a plugin. ChatGPT just built a plugin. So I'm curious what your thoughts are as far as, beyond Eversource, you specifically, kind of like, what are your thoughts on where it goes from here, from kind of a modeling and automation side of things, more so, and this kind of does bring the conversation beyond even just Revit. What is scripting, coding and automation? How does that start to play into here? And I think the base there is Revit helps facilitate that, but where do you think this kind of automation path?
I think the automation path comes in the fact of the different systems that you can tie in to tie into like different systems, such as like an asset management system, basically a facilities maintenance system or something like that. The Revit has the data, but it's getting that data to work with various systems, and that requires programming or at least some sort of integration software that can take that information and integrate it with another software. So I think that's where a lot of it's going to translate with coding, is just be able to not just have a Revit model, but now you have a model that can basically connect to many different softwares depending on the needs of the company.
So what technology most excites you? I mean, obviously everyone's talking about AI and everything. Digital twins, augmented reality, anything excites you, Dan?
I definitely like the aspect of the digital twin. I can see, I mean, I don't see like the construction crews maybe being with VR glasses going through and picking stuff, but maybe an augmented glasses where they can like see, like they can look at the component in real life, and then it kind of has like almost like that little slight overlay where you can pick on it and it can give you like, here's all the bill of materials, stuff like that, for that equipment. Or hey, can we get the equipment drawings for that piece of equipment? Just being able to basically touch on with the augmented glasses and stuff and looking at it, being able to just touch those components and seeing like the information come up in front of you on your basically your almost like VR glasses in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. I don't see the VR really hitting the field crews too much, and it's kind of restrictive for what you could do. But yeah, if you see this, there's it's an OSHA approved, I think it's called daiquiri, like the drink, but
Oh, nice.
it's a hard hat and OSHA glasses and everything, and it's augmented reality just for engineering data. I mean, stuff like that is phenomenal to me. Like if you could, like you said, just click on a piece of equipment and see the data in front of your eyes without having to go to an iPad or look it up anyway.
Yeah, and nice thing too with the digital twin too is if you can harness like the asset data in with the Revit model, which is what the digital twin is going to do for you. You now can even do things as like, hey, what equipment? Because when the stuff goes in service, like what's the life of that equipment, and you can almost do analysis on like an entire substation too, and see like, hey, what equipment should we be replacing the next couple of years? Can we start planning this stuff ahead of time? And that's where like planning and having the data and having the asset management information all starts to tie together. So that's why I keep saying like long-term goal, there's a lot you can do with the data, and the data is really the most important aspect.
It sounds like what excites you is very much so what I think excites me right now is the predictive tucked in behind having all that, having, whether it be a digital twin, that's the buzzword that's been around for a while now, or just integrated model, whatever we want to call it, having that data to have that capability to do, say, predictive analytics with or without AI. And I think that's, I'm curious where your thoughts are when it comes to AI implementation, just in the utility industry, anywhere, as a whole, bits and pieces. Where do you see AI? And I know we've kind of drifted a little bit from Revit, but where do you see AI kind of playing a role in the utility? And connect that back to some of where you think Revit helps us. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, so with AI, we have to treat AI almost, it's not like its own separate entity. We almost have to use it as almost like an assistant for us. And to me, AI is really an assistant, and it has all the data information, and it's really us asking it the right questions to give us the information we're looking to get. And with Revit, it has that Revit data as well. So with having that Revit data as well, we can start really like pushing the boundaries of AI and really saying, hey, what do you think what do you think is prone to failure in the next 5 years? Oh, we have this substation has certain breakers that could fail in the next couple of years because of they're basically they're running out of usage. Their life expectancy is getting close to the end. Stuff like that. Being able to ask questions, being able to say like, hey, how many breakers, how many of these ABB breakers do we have in stock? So really that's where I see like the benefit of AI is being almost like an assistant where we can ask it questions to get us answers more quickly versus what was the other alternative? We'd have to go look it up. And how long would that take for us to do? A long time versus the AI can give us an answer in seconds.
Yeah, that's a great description of it too, right? And it's, AI does that really well, right? What it does really well is read, all of Wikipedia and put it in a format that we can ask it questions, get natural language with. Yeah, and that's a great tie-in too, because all the work you're doing in Revit now, you're putting all that data in, all the BIM information, it's all going to come into, not a lot we could do with all these prints to do with AI, and take a lot of work, scan them and get it to understand. So it all comes.
Yeah, plus if anything happens to that paper, usually
Yeah.
an extra copy of it.
Yeah.
I mean, we scanned all our prints over the years, but still, it's nice when it's have it digitally and you have backups of that backup.
I think my favorite AI response or concern was the one that Trevor got in last year's SDSIC, where he asked everybody in the audience to submit concerns, why they be things they're afraid about AI, and somebody submitted a response saying, I'm afraid that if we use AI to scan all of our as-builts, they'll know how inaccurate they might be. which couldn't be more true. You get some as-builts. Who hasn't been there before? You get as-builts, and there's a foundation at the station. You're like, oh, well, there's this whole circuit breaker here that's not on this. It never fails.
Yeah, I forgot to publish those, Corey. We should probably do a podcast just on those. I got about 70 responses, and some of them are pretty hilarious.
It's a great idea. We'll do like a little lottery arm and just the
Yeah, that's right.
Well, Nelson, we really appreciate you joining us today. I love this topic of Revit, partly because of my background, but it's always a pleasure having a kind of some unique perspectives on the show, and we're going to kind of try to continue to talk about Revit on the show, and have some more guests on here. But we really do appreciate you joining us, talking shop with us, gleaning us all your information, both Eversource and not Eversource. We always like to kind of conclude these with a general question that I think is good for everybody to take away. But if you've got three, doesn't have to be three, but if you got three, do us a favor, name three books or knowledge sources that you feel have been integral to your life, either professional or personal.
What I can do is in regards to books, I would say like in terms of source of knowledge, I do basically go by this source of knowledge for many, many years now, which is following agile workflow process. That's been really key to me. Basically, it's helped me come up with new ideas for the companies I've worked at. And really the main idea behind it, the concept is basically it's to research the vision to see if it's feasible, and then basically creating goals and a detailed plan to implement those goals. At the same time, as you're implementing those goals, it's then getting the right people and refining those ideas and receiving feedback to then readjust your initial vision, because you're never going to get it right the first time. And then afterwards, it's just repeating the process over and over again until you get it right. And that to me has been very important with anything I do, is following through that basic source of knowledge that I've learned over the years.
Great advice. And Nelson, it was great to talk to you and not have all the noise of the conference in the background for them.
Yes.
Yeah, we really appreciate you being on, man. It was great conversation.
I want to kind of open the floor here for any advice you may have for anybody else trying to implement, could be Revit, any design technology in the utility industry. What are your thoughts here?
I'd say the biggest thoughts I can say is that to implement any kind of software or new technology, you really need to have supportive upper management. It's really tough to implement something by yourself, especially with Revit. This is going to take the whole organization as a whole to come together, basically, to be on the same page. Because if you don't have that commitment, it becomes very difficult.
Too true.
Yeah, great advice. Great advice. All right, gents. Thanks again, Nelson. Cory.
Thank you both.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thanks, Trevor. Thanks, Nelson. Really appreciate you joining us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. I'm going to go update my background.
All right. Just wait till he sees all the videos I've made. Right. Oh man, what is going on here?
Awesome.
This folder became a mess.
And that's a wrap on another episode of the Power Up Podcast. Thanks for tuning in and powering through the future of energy and utility design with us.
If you liked what you heard, be sure to follow us or subscribe. And don't forget to leave a review. It really helps other listeners find the show.
You can also connect with us on LinkedIn or wherever you find your podcasts and learn about more episodes, resources, notes, and more.
Got a topic you want us to tackle or a guest we should bring on? Drop us a line. We'd love to hear from you.
Until next time, stay curious.
Stay connected. Keep powering on.